there was some guy who actually was spending 400,000 euros to hack Bitcoin. Like he really was like, hey, here there are 400,000 euros, and he bought a lot of hackers and a lot of developers like hack this thing. I really want to hack Bitcoin. And this was early on, like this was like 2012 or something, like when he did it. And even then he could not do it. Like it was no way. And now we are so diversified, so decentralized, so big that it's just impossible to overtake the network.
Hi everyone. Today we have an esteemed guest. Robin, can you introduce yourself?
Hi, how are you doing? Yes, I'm Robin. I'm a Bitcoiner. I'm talking a lot about Bitcoin. I have my own podcast. You can see here the Robin Seyr podcast. Yeah, that's basically me. I'm since 4 years now in Bitcoin, a little bit over 4 years. I started in 2020 when I was like, oh, I was really big in stocks, and we can get maybe in the story a little bit. But just to summarize it, I was in stocks, had some successes there. People wanted to know like what my opinion is on Bitcoin. I said for 3 years straight, oh, it's a scam. No, I don't like Bitcoin. But then after a while, more and more people kept asking me, hey, what is this Bitcoin thing? What are you doing in Bitcoin? And then what are you doing with stocks? Like, why are you not in Bitcoin? And then I was like, okay, I should at least research about Bitcoin, and I should have good arguments against Bitcoin. I want to prove everyone right that Bitcoin is a scam. And in this weekend where I researched about Bitcoin, I was like, let's get into Bitcoin. And then on Friday, I was still believed, oh, it's a scam. Then I researched the whole weekend. And on Sunday, I was like, maybe it is something. And on Monday, I bought my first Bitcoins. On Tuesday, I bought my ledger and everything done. And then it took me a year to get full on in Bitcoin, like from having a big stock portfolio, having other investments, to like full on only Bitcoin and nothing else. Like I literally hold only Bitcoin. I'm 104% in Bitcoin.
Perfect. So I like the 104%. So like what made you like this when you were researching, what stood out to you that Bitcoin is not a scam? Because obviously you're already convinced with Bitcoin. So what convinced you that otherwise?
That is really hard to say. Like I was first a stock investor. I was believing that you have to have a stock flow. You have to have something of an cash flow on an asset. But the one thing that actually stood out to me in Bitcoin was that nobody can manipulate it. Because if you have a scam, you have someone that benefits from it, someone that pulls the rug from you, someone that actually has then the capability to say like, no, I pull the rug now and everyone else is kind of scammed. So that you need to have some centralized authority, some centralized entity who has the control over the project, over the coin, whatever, to pull the plug out. But there's no one in Bitcoin. Like there's no head, there's no CEO, there's no spokesperson. There are a lot of popular voices in Bitcoin. The popular voices maybe have an influence over the short-term price action of Bitcoin, but they don't have any influence over the actual protocol. And that what actually stood out to me. And I was kind of searching like, oh, how can we hack that? How can we do that? And I heard a story on my podcast. There was some guy who actually was spending 400,000 euros to hack Bitcoin. Like he really was like, hey, here there are 400,000 euros, and he bought a lot of hackers and a lot of developers like hack this thing. I really want to hack Bitcoin. And this was early on, like this was like 2012 or something, like when he did it. And even then he could not do it. Like it was no way. And now we are so diversified, so decentralized, so big that it's just impossible to overtake the network. And this is what actually stood out to me in Bitcoin, because there's no CEO, no marketing team, no authority over it. And that's an amazing thing. We never had that in the history. And that's why I also say we never had money. We tried to find money. We like, oh, seashells, oh, gold, oh, then fiat money. But we never actually had true money. So in the way it should be. And with Bitcoin, finally, we have the money that we always needed, and the money that we always wanted.
Perfect. So do you subscribe to the concept or the approach that maybe a lot of Bitcoiners do subscribe to, which is like they would basically dollar cost average? Or do you maybe some others subscribe to that they don't really consider a dollar like as a valid currency or like a good currency? So they would just put all their assets directly into Bitcoin. Because you
Your
mentioned
Bitcoin,
104%, right? So that's why.
yeah, yeah. Your Bitcoin allocation should be a representative of how convinced you are of Bitcoin. If you like Bitcoin, but you're not, then you can start with like 1%, just like dabble into it, see how it works. Also, there's like in my first week, I did not jump all in Bitcoin. Like it took me over a year to jump all in Bitcoin and over than all in even. Which I do not recommend. I'm actually like I was at 120%. I'm getting older now. I'm still just 25, but I'm getting now to a point where like, okay, I only want 95% in Bitcoin and then 5% in some cash thing, some fiat thing, where I don't know, maybe like some savings account who makes me 2% a year or something like that, who where I can actually really quickly get some money out to have like I don't know my computer breaks or I need some repair in the house or something like that. But to come back to your question, you have to have a good allocation. And if you are not sure about Bitcoin, in my first week I only have like 200 euros in Bitcoin, something like that. I put in Bitcoin because I was not 100% sure about Bitcoin. I was just like, okay, I think it's not a scam and I think there is something. So I put 200 euros in Bitcoin, put it on Coinbase, put it on the ledger, from the ledger back to Coinbase, back to my bank account, just to like figure out what this thing is. And that's why I also recommend people just like put some money in, put the money again out, see what's the technology all about, see what the hardware wallet is, see how you can sign transactions. And even if you don't like it, even if you are against Bitcoin after that, at least you got gain some knowledge. Like that's like the cost to you have to spend some money if you actually want to raise your knowledge, raise your things. So in that order, like that's what I do. And if you then consider like, oh, what do I want to own? What else should I own? And if you have a house, it's fair. Like some people want to have own their own house they're in. I don't, but some people want to have this. And then yeah, you have your house, but maybe what else do you want to own? Do you want to own your car? Yeah, that's it's fine. If you want to own your car, you can drive around with your car. You can also rent it, or you can use public transport depending on where you live. What else do you want to own? Do you want to own stocks? Do you want to own other cryptos? Do you want to own I don't know, some bonds? There are a lot of different options, but in the end of the day, you have to see where is your portfolio going. Do I really want to own some small token that is might be a big thing in the future, but there are so many risks to it. The project could vanish tomorrow. I don't want that. I just want to work as hard as I can, put all my savings in the hardest asset I can, which is Bitcoin. And so it's fair if you own some other assets, but I personally am only convinced of Bitcoin, and I right now would not even know if I would sell some Bitcoin for what would I sell. So that's my approach right now. But if you're not convinced of Bitcoin 100%, then have 50% in something else. Like that's fair.
So just to clarify, so there are also like two common approaches like in the Bitcoin community. Some people think of Bitcoin as like a store of value, so they don't want to spend it at all because obviously its values appreciates with time. And some others think of it as like it's the core principle that Satoshi like basically started the whole project for, which is peer-to-peer transactions. So do you use Bitcoin on the daily, or do you just focus on it as a saving account or like a saving asset?
I would love to spend Bitcoin, but there's the ideology and there's practicality. And I always focus on practicality. If we have Bitcoin now, I live in Austria. When I spend Bitcoin, there is a 27.5% tax on all the profits. So, like if I buy Bitcoin now, I hold it for half a year and then spend it in the half the year. I don't know, maybe it went up a lot. Like I think last half year it went up like 70, 80% or something like that. We just have a dip, maybe it's less, but let's say there's like 100% increase in that. If I put 1,000 euros in there, now it's 2,000 euros, and now I sell those 2,000 euros, and I want to have like some small motorbike, and I spend Bitcoin with that. Not only did I had to spend 2,000 euros, I also, on top of that, have to spend 275 euros on taxes on top of that I have to, on the end of the year, give the government. So why would you do that? Why would you spend Bitcoin when there's tax implications? If you live in El Salvador or in a place where Bitcoin is tax free, maybe I would actually live on a full Bitcoin standard. But right now, I don't because I need cash. I need pay my taxes in Bitcoin. I need to pay the grocery store in Bitcoin. I need to pay not in Bitcoin in fiat. I need to pay grocery taxes and all my rent in fiat, so I have to have some cash. That's just
Okay, but
practical
let's
sense.
reframe the question, maybe not like about your particular case, but let's say about the concept that you hope for or like your aspiration. Like, for example, if you look at someone like Michael Saylor, his approach is that he believes the dollar is like the most important currency and Bitcoin is only like for savings. But let's say, for example, your approach, like regardless of the law, let's say, for example, that there's no taxes on capital gains related to Bitcoin and it's just considered like a currency same as was you mentioned in El Salvador. So would you prefer to have Bitcoin as like or everything you save and also you spend it, or do you still prefer it only as a saving?
If Bitcoin is the best store of value, it's the best savings technology. If we assume that for a second, why would you not, like, why would you put any money in anything else than Bitcoin? Like, if this is the best technology to save your time, save your financial energy, why would you take 5% out of that 100% and put it in a weaker currency, in a weaker money? Like that does not make sense for me ideology.
How about the
Um,
spending? So let's say, for example, I agree with you, like put everything in this approach, have you have everything in a Bitcoin, but then you when you spend like as you mentioned, like you want to go to the grocery store, you want to pay rent, all these things, would you prefer to pay it in Bitcoin directly, or would you, like regardless of the tax, like if we set this aside, would you prefer to pay it in Bitcoin, or would you still prefer to use the US dollar or like the euro or some other currency?
Definitely Bitcoin. Like like right now there are a lot of things to consider. The tax implications. But there's also something else. Because we are so early in Bitcoin, it's quite volatile. So it wouldn't make sense right now to even have some fiat currencies in your portfolio, like few percent, to actually cover your basis. Because if you have a salary, like if you have the salary in Bitcoin, I guess it does not make sense to sell Bitcoin. But if you have your salary in fiat and you have the salary in that currency, it's more stable in the short term, even though it loses over the long run. So it would make sense to actually spend your fiat, and then what you don't need is in Bitcoin. But if we now zoom out, like in a higher sense, like in 50, 100, 200 years, in Bitcoin will be at some point boring. Just so you know, so at some point, Bitcoin will be such a great asset that we will not talk about it like that. Like we don't talk about the TCP IP protocol right now, but we talk about Bitcoin because it's a new thing.
So, good point about like the protocol. So, have you like what's your view on Lightning in that from that lens?
We need to scale Bitcoin. Bitcoin has limitations on the main layer. We will never spend Bitcoin on the base layer fundamentally. Like we will not go to Starbucks and get some Bitcoin and spend a transaction of like 2,000 euros fee. Like the transaction fees on Bitcoin on the main layer will increase over time. We now have maybe 10 euros, maybe 20 euros, depending on what you transact and what the current fee is. This will go up to 200 and 2,000, maybe even beyond that. And the average transaction on the main layer, like not the fee, the average transaction volume, will go up to 200, 2,000, 2 million, 20 million at some point, because it's a settlement layer. It's not a payment layer. The payment layer comes above that. So there all the second layers come in: Lightning, Liquid, Fedimint. There are a lot of different layer two solutions. Which one will win out? The free market will decide. Right now, most people use the Lightning layer, but it has a lot of drawbacks also. But it seems to be accepted. Lightning might be also the railways, the highways between layer three technologies, and with that layer three technologies, this is then how we spend it. Even technologies like the fiat currencies. We had gold as a fundamental. Then gold was exchanged. Then we got the paper currencies. But then on top of that, like there's MasterCard, there's Visa. This is MasterCard and Visa is like a layer three, layer four technology, depending on how you see it. So to compare yet now the Bitcoin main layer with MasterCard and Visa does not make sense. It makes sense to see, okay, how does Bitcoin scale over time if more people want to use it as a payment method? And when we are at this point where people actually want to use it as a payment method in like a few years, then we have a layer three, maybe even layer four technology where there's Bitcoin, maybe Lightning, maybe something else, and then we use it as a payment. Then it's instant, it's really quick, There's no transaction fees, just there's the MasterCard. And by the way, MasterCard, there are fees, just the customer doesn't see it, but the merchant sees it.
Yes, but wouldn't you say that maybe this could be a risk in itself? Like as you mentioned about the gold and the fiat currencies initially, like maybe like at least like 50 years ago, fiat was linked to gold somehow in some capacity. And then when we focused on fiat only, what happened is that it got abstracted, like, so the basically the base layer disappeared.
This episode is sponsored by DegreeSign.
CoinExams platform was purpose-built by DegreeSign to be one of the best-performing platforms in the crypto space.
DegreeSign is an agency developing web products with a long experience of building products from scratch for maximum performance and stability.
Start today. Just email make@degreesign.com.
So don't you think that maybe there will be like a detachment if we focus on layer 2s and layer 3s? Then maybe the whole benefit of Bitcoin, like being limited in supply and all these things on the layer 1 would be like abstracted away, and then we don't have these benefits anymore? Or you don't think this is like a risk?
This is definitely a risk, and we have already this risk. Like this is already there because the ETF, for example, it's kind of layer 2 to Bitcoin. This is wrapped Bitcoin, if you want, like that, because it's not real Bitcoin what you buy, but people like the old 80-year-old guy who has a 20 million portfolio calls his financial advisor and says like, hey, I want to have some Bitcoin. He is not getting real Bitcoin. He's getting ETF Bitcoin. So this is already a layer technology on top of Bitcoin and not actual Bitcoin. So those risks are already here. And there are a lot of questions. Oh, will they have paper Bitcoin? That's basically your question. Will be there paper Bitcoin where an exchange maybe only has 2 million Bitcoin, but they do as they have 3 million or 4 million Bitcoin. That's what FTX did. That's basically what FTX tried. They had like in the reserves a ridiculous low number of Bitcoin. They have like 2 Bitcoin or something like that. It was really, really low, but they gave out so many Bitcoin to all their customers. And my theory around that is the difference between gold and Bitcoin. Bitcoin is verifiable. We know how many Bitcoin there are. We don't know how much gold there is exactly. We can digitally prove Bitcoin. We know, oh, this address belongs to Coinbase. This address belongs to that. And there are companies who have to report numbers. So yes, it's possible. Everything like the companies, the governments, and everything works together to just manipulate the Bitcoin price. But even if they really work together, and even if we really tried hard with I don't think will ever happen, because when the government and private sector ever work successfully together, they are always like, there's always competition, there's always free market, especially on a Bitcoin standard. Even if they did, at some point it will crumble down. At some point people will be like, oh, why is the Bitcoin price not, like, people will ask questions, and if they have a lot of questions and they cannot find the answers, they will flourish to the actual Bitcoin, the real Bitcoin. And if this actually happens, there might be a difference between the actual Bitcoin price that is handed P2P and is on exchange, between those who are on an ETF or other layers. And this we even see it right now. When you have Bitcoin, you buy it on an exchange, you buy a lower price of Bitcoin than when you buy it peer-to-peer, because there's a premium in order to buy a non-KYC Bitcoin. It's still the same Bitcoin, but it's non-KYC. So the free market will rule that. It's possible that for even 5 years, they manipulate the price, definitely. But Bitcoin is the best thing we have in order to protect each other from that. Like if you want to find an argument against Bitcoin, that's fine, but that's still the best option that we have. Everything else is way easier to manipulate.
Correct. Very interesting. And I think eventually ETFs will have to, I'm not sure if some are doing this already, like we'll have to show proof of reserves, basically. And the difference, as you mentioned, with gold is that with gold is very hard to verify. Even if you see the gold in its physical form, it's even like you have to do like some tests to just actually check if this is like a pure gold or not. But with this, it's instantly provable and verifiable. So yeah, it's very interesting. So right now, how do you see the Bitcoin moving? Like you mentioned, like for example, the taxes issue and all this. How do you see this moving? Like maybe after 5 or 10 years, how do you see the Bitcoin economy moving forward? Do you see like it's changing, or you see that this will maintain its current status quo, that it being just like a savings account?
We will have global game theory playing out, and everyone has a need to know about Bitcoin. Some just don't know it yet. We even have a presidential candidate, Trump, who has a need to know. He was seeing that there's a big voter group of people who like Bitcoin and who like crypto. And he says now publicly, oh, Bitcoin is a good thing. We should embrace Bitcoin. We should mine all the Bitcoin in America, which is absurd, but he said it. And listen to what he said about Bitcoin just a year or 2 years ago. He did not change. He is, I don't know, 60, 70 years old. He did not all of a sudden discover Bitcoin, but he discovered that he has to be pro Bitcoin in order to be the next president of America. And so in a lot of sense, also El Salvador, they discovered that they need Bitcoin in order to be more independent of America because they are dependent on the US dollar. So everyone has a need to know about Bitcoin, but some just don't know it yet, and some the pain is not high enough. When I talk with some rich uncle of me, and they're like, I'm fine, I don't need that. Yes, they're living in the Western world, and they are in a really cozy place, and their currency works and everything works. But ask someone in Lebanon about Bitcoin. They have a different opinion. They have a different opinion about money. And so when we move on and the fiat currencies collapse a little bit more and a little bit more, we will come to the point where Bitcoin is the one asset that will win out and will win in a free market. And then countries, to come back to your question, countries will have an incentive to get Bitcoin capital and Bitcoin people in their country. So they will have no or low taxes on Bitcoin, as El Salvador is now trying to do, as other countries are trying to do. And so this will force game theory that nation states are really trying hard to get the best talents and get the best Bitcoiners and get the most amount of capital in their countries. This is also the theory of sovereign individual. And there's not only Bitcoin playing in this, there's also the internet revolution in general playing in this, because all of a sudden we have remote work. I work remotely. I can work from wherever I want. I have 2 lights, a camera, and a microphone. I can set this setup up everywhere. And I don't even have anything in the background. This is just a white wall. Like if I turn the lights on, it's just a white wall. So wherever I go, I have my work with me. And if the government here is not good to me, I can really easily move. I have my Bitcoin in my head, go over the border. I have my work with me. I can buy a camera also in El Salvador or somewhere else. But this will make citizens, this will make people way more movable. Still, I have friends here. I have my girlfriend here. I have my family here. Those are things that root me here and would not make me want to move. But if they do something really stupid, I might move. And this is where global game theory comes in. This is where I think nation state will adopt to Bitcoin, as Trump did, as El Salvador did, as myself also did. I was convinced Bitcoin is a scam, but I was like, that's not a scam, because I got a need to know and I got educated on Bitcoin. So everyone will find it eventually, 8 billion people. And now we have like maybe a few millions that are actually really in Bitcoin. Like I know the numbers are like 100 million or 200 million, but I talk about then people that actually have a significant amount in Bitcoin, over 10, over 20, over 30% of their net worth. And not only a lot of people have Bitcoin, but they have like 1,000 euros of like a 200,000 euro portfolio in Bitcoin, which is not, I would not call him a Bitcoiner.
I see. So yeah. So you think that we will have to eventually wait until like the collapse of the fiat just to see the actual like hyper Bitcoinization or something like that. But maybe like in the current state, it will be like moving at a slower pace, but there will be some progress as people discover Bitcoin and discover the need to actually use Bitcoin. So, other than Bitcoin, you mentioned like you focus only on Bitcoin. Why haven't you looked into other crypto? Is it because like maybe they don't like they have all the things, the negative thing that you mentioned, like they have maybe a centralized authority, like the higher risk and all these things?
They have a higher risk, and they definitely have some drawbacks. And I did not find a really good coin where the use case was there, the security was there, the plan was there, and the decentralization was there. where everything met. And it was actually an addition to like, oh, this makes sense to not put it on Bitcoin, but have it on their own, because there are a lot of use cases where I'm like, okay, this is great that we have that, but like for example, when we put bananas on or like the grocery store adopts Bitcoin, and then you can scan a barcode, and then you know where this banana was in the past. This is a really famous example that a lot of people bring up, and I always see the Oracle problem with that use case, where I'm like, okay, if we have a centralized authority who brings the thing from the real world onto the blockchain world, then we always have someone we have to trust. This might be a use case. People might like that. People might enjoy the use of blockchain. But the blockchain in itself is not an invention. Blockchain is just a way to save data. We also have to secure it. That's why the nodes in Bitcoin are important, the miners in Bitcoin are important, and the blockchain technology. Like all those pieces together makes Bitcoin so great. And I didn't find any project where I'm like, this is really good. A year ago, I was even a really toxic Bitcoin maxi where I said like, I hate all those altcoins. I call it all shit coins. Right now, I'm a little bit more on just the free market side. I'm like, if there is actual value in any of those altcoins, they will accrue value and they will survive over the long run. Right now, I don't see anything. If I see it, it's okay. I might adopt it. I'm not against altcoins. I see a lot of scams. I'm definitely against the scams. But I also stopped calling out the scams, because then I do it all the time, because there are so many new scams coming up, and I have to maybe find a person who just deletes all the scams from my YouTube sections, because it becomes like, I think it was a minute maybe every day a few months back. Now it gets to like 10 minutes. I have to delete all the scams accounts and get new keywords into my restricted list on YouTube. So the point that I want to make is there can be value in altcoins. Definitely. I don't see it right now. Maybe I'm too stupid to see it. Maybe I'm right and only Bitcoin will survive, and we will have all those use cases of altcoins on layer 2 and layer 3 on Bitcoin is also a possibility. And maybe some altcoin has value and it will accrue. The only thing that I'm really certain about, we will not have 20,000 coins that have value. If we even have more than Bitcoin, because I see Bitcoin kind of the protocol, like TCP/IP protocol, and then we built Facebook, Google, Amazon all on top of that, which I can also see with Bitcoin. But even if I'm wrong about that, and we have another chain next to Bitcoin, it will not be 20,000. It might be a second one. I don't see a market where 20 or even 30 chains survive. And this is also the problem that I see. For example, like Ethereum switched from proof of work of proof of stake. Since the switch, they lost value against Bitcoin since then really steadily, because people are like, oh, this whole protocol was now changed and now it's something else. Like, how is it decentralized if there's like someone who can completely change the network? And there are a lot of questions for me when I see other coins.
Just to be fair at this exact point, like even Bitcoin itself changes a lot. So I'm not sure like if like for example Bitcoin addresses format and structure changed like even more than Ethereum probably. Like Ethereum kept the same address format or the same structure for how the address is generated, and the whole protocol Bitcoin changed it dramatically. Like they wanted to SegWit, and now they have the Taproot update. This already implemented in a network. So yeah, I guess like yeah, but I agree with you on the other points. Okay, so going back to the stocks, you mentioned that you have experience stocks. How about what is your point of view about tokenization of the something like stocks? Like this is a real world asset and we can tokenize it. And I think Binance even tried to approach this like unsuccessfully, but at least from conceptual level, do you think that this is something that could be beneficial to have something like stocks tokenized?
I think we already tokenized them to a certain extent. They're already digital. They're already numbers on a screen. It's just a thing like, do we want to have stocks all issue their own tokens? Or like, are you proposing that all stocks are just issuing their own tokens and then we can buy those tokens and it's all on the blockchain? Is that what you're proposing?
Yeah. I mean, some people are proposing that, yes.
It's an interesting thing for me to think about. This is somewhere where the government definitely has some say in that, because when you have companies putting their capital in, you have a CEO and a management team you can get into prison. So this is something that will only happen with the approval of the government, because you can actually say, oh, you want to have your own token? Yeah, go ahead, do it. I will put you in prison if you do it, because I'm the SEC. And if you don't play by my rules, sorry to say, but you will be imprisoned. So with putting stocks on tokens and revolutionizing the stock market, basically possible. I'm not crazy about it because you have to trust when you invest in a stock, you have to trust the company anyways. You have to trust the CEO and the management team. So I don't know why we have to put this trustless, because there is a lot of trust involved already. Maybe it's a better way to track how many shareholders there are, how many different people there are in the stocks, and we can verify it on the blockchain. But then there has to be centralized authority who puts the stock in the company on the blockchain, and they can manipulate it. Then we have the Oracle problem again. So it could be a future. It could be something that happens. I don't see the big value in it. But again, maybe I'm stupid. Maybe I don't get the value of that. I focus on Bitcoin. I focus on revolutionizing the store of value of financial energy. This is something that actually people in Lebanon and all of around the world, and also then in America and Europe soon, will people actually have a need to that. But we can, of course, tokenize everything and put it on the blockchain and verify everything like that. But I'm not the biggest fan of blockchain technology, even though I'm 100% in Bitcoin.
So what's your view on if we go back to Bitcoin, right now with the Taproot update, there is an option to actually like have tokens, like even USDT is already available on layer 2s on Bitcoin. So do you think that this is the good direction for Bitcoin project, or are you against it?
That's the amazing thing. I don't care. If Bitcoin is sound money, if Bitcoin is actually the asset that I believe it to be, everyone can do with Bitcoin whatever they want to do, and Bitcoin will still work, and people will, and the incentive structure is still working. So if people want to have their Taproot assets and put their things on top of the blockchain, they can do that. I don't do that. I find it silly. But if they want to do it, go ahead, do it, have fun. If Bitcoin actually is the sound money, is actually the asset that we think it is, then we will survive all that, or maybe even thrive on that, because they have to pay transaction fees, which is an investment in miners, which is an investment in Bitcoin security, which is ultimately good for Bitcoin. And then we come back to the point where, oh, everything is actually good in Bitcoin. And there is such a high certainty at this point, on that point, that everything is good for Bitcoin on my part. There's like a 0.01% chance that I'm wrong. This is like the black swan that we don't see right now, because Bitcoin has been tested from so many people, from so many different layers, from really rich people to really poor people to people like they have a lot of resources in hacking. Bitcoin has been tested all around the world. It's a really big honeypot. If you crack Bitcoin, you have a lot of value to exert. So it has been tested really good, but the black swan is always possible. But the beautiful thing with the black swan, you cannot see it. And if you want to invest because there might be a black swan and diversify it, and that's why you diversify in 20,000 different tokens and stocks, then go ahead, do it. I rather concentrate on the potential winner and don't invest in loser, because that's basically diversification. I don't know how I came to this topic now, but if you have diversification, if you have a winner that you believe is the winner, no matter if it's true or not, but you believe that's the winner, why would you sell your winner to buy a loser?
Perfect. Thank you so much. So how do people reach you? Like, you have obviously your YouTube channel. Is there any other channels that you would like to shout out?
Yeah, I have my YouTube channel. It's Robin Seyr, written like on my t-shirt at Robin Seyr. The same handle is on Twitter, TikTok, Instagram, I think everywhere. LinkedIn, the same handle. You can find me with that name everywhere on the social media platforms. My main platforms is Twitter. I love Twitter. I grew up on Twitter. That's my main platform where I have the most followers also. I read all of the DMs. Like, if you have questions, if you want to reach out to me, just as you reached out to me on Twitter, I reached back to you on Twitter. So like, Twitter is the place where you can directly contact me. Then there is YouTube. where you can see all my videos. I think YouTube is the best place to consume a podcast, even though I also have it on Spotify, I also have it on Apple Podcasts, I also have it on Twitter. But YouTube is the most interactive way. There are the most comments there. There's the most fun there to watch the podcast. So definitely watch that and give it a try. Thank you for having me on.
Links in the description. Thank you so much for your time today. Have a nice day.
Perfect. Bye bye, Hassan.